Transition, the process of change from one condition to another.
We are now at a new crossroad where change is evident once again.
What does not serve us must transform us anew.
Returning to our original state of oneness and true nature of that which created who we truly are.
Confusion was the way of the past. Enlightenment is the way of the now and future, shedding away the layers of deceit.
We now bring you the transformation of the two who started as one. Our fearless planet never stands still.
Earth has been in a process of transition, and we are not exempt from this remarkable ongoing reality.
Welcome to Transition Radio.
Well, good evening. It's been since last year since we've seen all of you.
It has, you know, those little cliches, they never get old, do they?
They don't.
It's been a year since we've spoken
last Tuesday last year. Yeah. But anyway, welcome to Transitional Radio Show. We're glad to have you guys here. And we have, let's see here.
We've learned a few things about the no year. I don't want to say the other because they say that it's like you're signing on to the contract for the year by acknowledging everything that's taking place, because this really isn't anything, you know, astronomically significant this time.
It's not even a real new year.
No,
I mean, everything in our world is so synthetic, fabricated, synthetic, made up. And the more you dive deep into the rabbit hole, the deeper it gets. And it gets to be a lonely world because so many people are oblivious to the facts of what has been done to humanity, of what we've allowed as humans to take place.
I mean, we just look back at, 2020, and we see what humanity was put through. Not just one country, but all countries were under a lockdown. And for like 3 or 4 years, we weren't able to even say the word COVID because it was like some kind of banned speech.
Well, that's what they've been doing throughout history, and that's what we are going to be diving into, and what the eight episodes that we're going to be touching. This is episode 2, and Doors to the Sky and Lands of Ice, the buildings that don't match our history. And people are kept so busy that they don't even have the time to put two and two together, to really see, to remove that veil and see what's behind the curtain.
They really don't. They don't see what is right in front of them, and the things that scream like, wait a minute, this isn't supposed to be like this. This is not normal. So tonight we're going to take a little journey and go to those colder climates that we have, this frosted window back here. And we're going to be talking about these buildings that there's out of place.
Yeah, totally out of place. So tonight we're not starting with a theory. We're starting with a problem so physical, so unforgiving that it can't be argued with. It can't. Cold, real cold, the kind of cold that doesn't care what your textbook says, the kind that doesn't care who you are. It just takes what it takes.
And our problem is this. In some of the coldest places on Earth, there are palaces built like winter doesn't even exist. Giant windows, enormous doors, straight from the street. No buffer, no vestibule, no airlock entry. It's like the buildings were designed by someone who never had to live through a January.
Yeah, so we're treating this episode like a case file, not a sermon, not a manifesto, a case. Because the moment you treat it like a case, you stop getting bored. You start getting suspicious.
Case name, the Winter Palace problem. Not because it's only one palace, because it's a repeating pattern across the north, Russia, Prussia, parts of Central Europe, structures that look like they were designed for comfort and light, but built in climates where comfort and light are seasonal luxuries.
And the official explanation is always soothing. They like grandeur. They wanted natural light. It was the style. Okay, we'll give that story a fair trial, but we're going to interrogate it with one witness that never lies: winter. Because if the building fails winter, then the story fails with it.
Here's the tension we're going to keep alive all night. If your heat fails in a normal house, you get miserable.
Oh, yeah.
If your heat fails in a 20-foot high stone hall with giant single pane windows, you don't get miserable. You get dangerous. You get frostbite, as you've experienced before. You get hypothermia and you literally get dead. So whatever story we tell about these buildings has to survive that reality.
And I want to make a promise right now. Every segment we're going to do something the old version didn't do enough of. We're going to raise the stakes. We're going to introduce conflict. We're going to pressure test the best skeptical explanation. And we're going to end each segment with a hook that makes you lean forward, not drift off.
And we're preserving the order of our radio dramas because those are the set pieces. They're the crime scene photos, except we're doing them as sound. So the first one, our opening scene, is the moment somebody tries to make the palace livable. Not politely, not elegantly, violently. Because winter forces violence.
Picture the first winter after new occupants arrive. They walk into a hall built on a scale that feels almost arrogant. And they realize something simple. This place is beautiful, and this place will kill you. So they do what humans always do when the world doesn't match their needs. They modify it. They scar it. They break the art to save the body.
And that's where we begin. Not with a crown, not with a ball, but with a hammer. Because the hammer tells the truth. The hammer only swings when something is wrong. So imagine a huge empty hall. Hammer taps are building in intensity. And the radio drama is chimney punch, make a hole, or freeze.
A palace hall in deep winter, ceiling painted with angels in gold, walls dressed in ornate plasterwork, a room that was designed to impress the sky. And in the middle of it, scaffolding. Not restoration scaffolding, survival scaffolding. Men in heavy coats, breathe visible like smoke, hands numb, tools clumsy. But the order is clear. Make firework now or don't come back tomorrow.
Wind moans through the giant windows.
Mark the spot again. Higher. If we miss the flue line, smoke will choke the room.
No one cares about pretty. They care about warm. Swing.
The first hit doesn't puncture. It fractures, like the building is resisting, like it never expected to be treated this way. Dust falls, not normal dust, fine dust, the kind that looks expensive. This ain't normal plaster. It's layered. It's hard. Who builds a ceiling like stone?
Stop thinking. Hit again.
The painted ceiling sheds its skin. A glittering curtain of dust drops through the cold air. Bits of color, bits of gold leaf. A small blizzard indoors. The hall looks like it's snowing on the angels. We just smashed a painting. We just smashed.
We just made a way to live. Keep going.
A clean puncture, a hole where no hole belonged. Cold air whistles through it like the building exhales. And the hall feels even colder, like it's offended now, like the room knows it wasn't built for this. Why wasn't there a chimney already? Why would anyone build this and forget fire?
Maybe they didn't forget. Maybe they never needed it.
The last line is the hook for the entire episode. Maybe they never needed it. Because if they never needed it, we aren't talking about rich people being dramatic. We're talking about a missing system, a missing assumption, a building design around something that's no longer working.
And now we run our first test. Not a theory, a test. The common sense explanation says, they heated these places with stoves and fireplaces. Okay, let's see what that really means. Not emotionally, logistically, physically. How much heat does a room like that heat?
Let's keep it conservative. One hall, not the whole palace. A big hall, but not the biggest. Call it about 2,150 square feet with a 20-foot ceiling. Outside temperatures, about 13 below 0 Fahrenheit. Inside target, we're not aiming for comfortable. We're aiming for people can sit still without dying. Call it 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Not cozy, not romantic, just not dead.
Now here's where the official story starts sweating. Because giant windows, they leak heat. Stones absorb heat. Tall ceilings hoard warm air above your head where it's useless. And a giant door opening straight to the street is basically a controlled demolition of your indoor temperature. Every time it opens, the room resets to outside air.
So if the building was truly designed to be heated by fire, it should be like a fire machine. It should have a clean chimney system, multiple flues, design ventilation, soot management, fuel flow, storage, maybe a plan. But what do we keep seeing? We keep seeing punches, hacks, afterthoughts, chimneys cut through art, stovepipes shoved through walls like emergency medicine. That's not what design for fire looks like. That's what where freezing looks like.
Now let's give the skeptic the strongest version of the counter argument. Skeptic says, fine, it was inefficient. The elite didn't care. They wore furs. They performed cold as status. Sure, people do that. There's a line where performance stops and, well, biology begins. Because if you're inside a room that's 41 degrees, you just can't perform for long. Children get sick, elderly die, workers collapse, and your household becomes a constant medical emergency. No civilization runs its seat of power as a permanent cold storage unit.
Unless the building didn't begin its life under these climate assumptions, or unless the building had an operative system that made winter irrelevant. Which brings us to the line we're going to repeat tonight, because it's the spine of the episode. Someone built for comfort, someone else learned to endure.
And the quote-unquote endure people leave evidence. Not in books, in scars, in broken symmetry, in bricked-up openings, in hacked-in chimneys, in retrofits that look like panic, not design.
So segment 1 isn't about proving a grand theory. It's about proving a smaller, sharper point. The style explanation doesn't satisfy the physics, not by itself, not when the modifications look like survival surgery, which means we've earned the next question. If fire was the hack, what was the original plan?
And this is where the episode gets interesting, because our next clue is not in the grand halls. It's actually in the walls, behind the plaster, behind wallpaper, behind renovations where someone accidentally exposes something that looks less like architecture and more like infrastructure.
Because a building can be a shell, or a building can be a device. And if it's a device, it will have a nervous system, a distribution system, a hidden grid. Not soot-stained and smoky, but quiet, clean, embedded.
Segment 2 is where we peel back the wallpaper. And when we do, we find something that raises the hair on your arms, not because it's supernatural, because it's electrical. Segment 2 is called The Walls Aren't Just Walls. It's just a segment, baby. It's not the drama yet.
It's not the drama.
Not yet.
No break, no rest, no reset. We stay in the room because the moment you let your brain relax, the official story slips back in like a blanket. It was just a style. It was just fashion. It was just rich people being weird. But the hammer in that ceiling told us something else. It told us the building wasn't born with a fire plan. It had a fire plan forced onto it later.
And if that's true, then the building had another operating system. Something quieter than fireplaces. Something that really didn't need a chimney punch through angels. Something that warmed the space without painting the ceilings black. Because that's another part of this case that people don't talk about enough. Soot.
Let's treat soot like evidence. If you heat massive stone halls with open flames, you don't get clean air. You get smoke that never fully leaves. You get a residue that creeps into fabric, plaster, paint, lungs. You get blackened chandeliers. You get grime in every decorative groove. And yet again and again, restoration reveals interiors that are strangely vivid under later coatings. Not the look of a building that lived on a constant bonfire for centuries.
Now, to be fair, restorers clean. They do repaint. They scrub. But soot has a personality. It stains.
Yep.
It embeds. It leaves a signature. If these places were truly heated at the scale that people imagine, you'd see it everywhere. And that's the question. Why do we see so many fire, quote-unquote, add-ons without the expected fire fingerprints?
So segment 2 is about the nervous system. If a building is a device, it has a distribution. If it has a distribution, it has a conductor. If it has conductors, you might find them where nobody thinks to look. Behind the wallpaper, inside the wall, under the plaster, under the paint.
And yes, before anyone writes in, metal inside masonry can be normal. Buildings use iron ties. They use anchors. They use reinforcement. That is real. So we're not saying metal equals mystery. We are saying what kind of metal? How is it arranged? Is it random, structural, occasional, or does it behave like a grid?
Because structure solves stress. A grid solves distribution. And in this case, distribution is what we need to explain. Not just heat, comfort, uniform comfort. Because fireplaces don't give uniform comfort. They give hot spots and cold corners. They give smoke and drafts. They give a room that feels like a campsite in a cathedral.
Which is why your body notices differences immediately. If you've ever been in a cold stone space with one small heat source, you know this. Your face burns and your back freezes. Your feet go numb and you spend the whole time moving like a hunted animal. That's not how palaces were meant to feel. Not if they were meant to govern entire empires.
So we hunt for a clue that suggests the building once produced a different kind of warmth. Not flame warmth, radiant warmth, even warmth. The kind of warmth that doesn't need constant supervision.
And now we arrive at our second crime scene moment. Because the second radio drama in our preserved order is not a fancy dinner. It's not a spire. It's a discovery. It's the moment someone pulls back the wallpaper and realizes the wall is doing something it shouldn't be doing. Radio drama number 2 is called Copper Mesh Discovery. That's not insulation. Imagine a close-up of a scrape of paper and plaster dust falling.
A palace corridor under renovation. Not a show renovation, but a careful museum restoration. A practical renovation, the kind meant to make old grandeur behave like a modern building. Wallpaper peels, plaster flakes, and behind it, something that doesn't look like stonecraft, it looks like engineering. a fine lattice embedded in the wall woven like fabric. Copper, not a single strip, a web.
Paper tearing, a soft metal tink. Come here. Look at this. Tell me that's not wire.
That's copper. That's copper mesh. Why would anyone put copper in a wall? Reinforcement, old tricks, keep stripping. It's warm. No fire lit in here, but it's warm to the touch. Cold hands, that's all. You've been outside.
No, look, when he touched it, the air changed, like the room noticed. Very soft electrical tick and a tiny spark erupts.
Did you see that? A spark off the wall. Stop, we're not paid to chase ghosts. We're paid to install pipes. We need space for the new boiler run. Cut it out.
The sound of a metal being snipped and copper twang.
The mesh is cut, and the warmth vanishes so fast, it feels like a door closing. The room returns to dead stone, just cold, just echo, just silence.
Whatever that was, it was alive.
The warmth vanishes detail is why this clue hits, because it reframes the walls. Walls aren't supposed to feel alive. Walls aren't supposed to respond. Walls aren't supposed to carry a sensation like a nerve.
And now we do what we didn't do before. We don't just declare what it means. We interrogate it like an investigator. We ask, what are the normal explanations for copper mesh in walls? And then we ask, do these explanations satisfy the Winter Palace problem?
Normal explanation. 1, reinforcement. Okay, copper can be used in certain contexts, but iron is more common for structural reinforcement. If you needed strength, copper is not the first choice. Copper is soft. Copper is valuable. It's expensive to bury in walls if all you want is strength. So reinforcement is possible, but it's not automatically satisfying. It's like saying the bank vault is reinforced with gold. Possible, but why?
Normal explanation 2, pest control, moisture, some kind of old insulation method. Again, possible, but insulation doesn't need to be a continuous woven conductor network. Insulation wants to trap air, resist flow. A metal mesh does the opposite. It invites conductivity. So if it's insulation, it sure is weird insulation.
Normal explanation 3, early electrical experiments, early wiring. That's the one people lean on. And it's fair. The 1800s were full of experiments. So could it just be early wiring? Sure. But here's the problem. Wiring usually has endpoints, fixtures, switching, channels, and logic of from here to there. A mesh embedded broadly into a wall suggests field behavior, not point-to-point power. It suggests distribution across surfaces. It suggests something like radiant infrastructure.
And if we bring it back to our central question, heat, this is where it becomes interesting. Because one way to warm a huge stone hall without smoke is to make the walls do the work, not with flame, with radiant surfaces. If warmth is distributed, you don't need a giant fire roaring in every corner. You don't need endless fuel carts. You don't need soot. You get even comfort, quiet comfort, the kind of governing palace would actually want.
Now let's do the skeptic pressure test. Skeptic says, okay, but you're leaping. Copper mesh doesn't mean lost energy. It could be anything. You're telling a spooky story. That's fair. So we set a rule for ourselves. We only let a clue carry weight if it solves multiple contradictions at once. One clue shouldn't just be cool. It should be useful. So does the conductive walls idea solve multiple problems? Well, let's check.
Problem 1, heating inefficiency by fireplace. Conductive walls could provide uniform warmth without relying on open flame. That's 1. Problem 2, Soot absence relative to expected fuel burn. If the building used distributed warmth instead of constant fireplaces, soot becomes a later artifact, not an original baseline. That's 2. Problem 3, why retrofits look violent. If the original system failed, new occupants would do exactly what they did in the drama 1. They would punch chimneys, install stoves, hack vents. That is 3. Problem 4, why the architecture ignores winter design common sense. If the building didn't need vestibules or small openings because warmth was ambient, then giant doors and windows become less suicidal. And that's 4. So yes, the conductive wall hypothesis is useful. It explains multiple contradictions with one mechanism.
And when a hypothesis explains multiple contradictions, it earns time on the show. Not certainty, but time, investigation.
And now we introduce our next escalation tool. In this reboot, every segment ends with a sharper hook. So here's the hook at the end of segment 2. If you find conductors inside the walls, then you should see behavior outside the walls, on the exterior, on the openings, on the parts that interface with weather. Because no system exists only in secret, it leaves patterns.
Which brings us to our next clue, modification of openings. If heat is precious, you reduce leakage, you shrink the holes, you add buffers, you create vestibules, you treat every opening like a wound. But instead of elegant solutions, we see something else. We see bricking, we see ceiling, we see giant lower windows turn into masonry. Like someone said, we can't make it work as designed, so we'll suffocate the design.
And that's what brings us to our next drama in this episode. The moment the building loses its openness, the moment a palace built for skylight gets walled up like a bunker, because the new occupants aren't ready. They're not trying to preserve beauty. They're trying to survive.
Segment 3 is where we watch them do it. We watch the symmetry break. We watch the comfort civilization vanish behind bricks. And we watch a building designed to breathe, get forced to hold its breath.
Segment 3 is called Bricking the Sky.
Okay, we've got our first 2 pieces of evidence on the board. 1, the retrofits are violent, chimneys punch through arts like emergency surgery. 2, behind the skin of the building, we find a nervous system, metal in patterns that behave less like random reinforcement and more like distribution. Now comes the 3rd clue, and it's the one you can't unsee once you see it. The building starts losing its openings.
And I want to say this in a way that keeps us honest. Breaking up windows can happen for a bunch of normal reasons. Security, storm damage, renovations, changing layouts, even fashion. So we're not saying a bricked window equals a buried civilization. We're saying in this case file, the bricking shows up as part of a sequence of survival behaviors.
And I think it's time, almost a 30-minute mark, for one of our songs. So let's see, we're going to do I Want to Be Free, Quiero Estar Libre. It's got a nice little swing, Latin swing to it.
It does.
And I wrote this back in 2009, and it was actually my album Enslaved. But with Suno, I gave it a totally different vibe. So hopefully you guys enjoy it.
Quiero estar libre. Lara encerrado en una cueva, solamente con un hueco para ver las mentiras que nos han dado y mi alma para mantenerme bien. ¿Cuántos años han pasado con la misma situación? Solamente somos esclavos de esta organización, hermano. estar libre, quiero poder volar. Déjame poder abrir mis alas, no me quites más mi libertad. I want to be free, like a bird up in the sky. I want to be free. Let my wings begin to fly. I want to be free. From this matrix they provide. I want to be free. From the system and the life. Esta tierra que pisamos, ellos nos quieren quitar. Con sus leyes y paredes, eso me parece mal. Si este mundo es para todos, no hay un dueño individual. Que yo sepa, no hay una marca que diga mío no más. No creo. Quiero estar libre. Quiero poder volar. Déjame poder abrir mis alas, no me quites más mi libertad. I want to be free, like a bird up in the sky. Let my wings begin to glide. From this matrix they provide. From the system and the life. Abran sus puertas, hermanos, junto con su corazón. No se olviden de su pasado cuando ustedes vinieron de otro lado. El que más billete tenga es que mande en realidad. Esto no es un comunismo, peor es un gran capital. Capitalismo. Quiero estar libre. Quiero poder volar. Déjame poder abrir mis alas, no me quites más mi libertad. I want to be free, like a bird up in the sky. Let my wings begin to glide. From this matrix they provide. From the system and the lies. I want to be free from the system and the lies. I want to be free from the system and the lies. I don't know what it will take to change our lives, to change our ways, to bring all brothers to one side, to bring a union of all kinds. No more abuse, no more disgrace. We need to be in the same space. Wake up my people and look around. The rich are richer while we drown. I say let's bring this matrix right down. Oh, yeah. I wanna be free. I want to be. Let us be free. We want to be free. Oh, yeah. Si la libertad es para todo el mundo, Dios mío.
And I think freedom is something that everyone on this planet wants. You know, the whole
really is.
borders and the whole separation and the whole elite class versus those of us who are not the elites. You know, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom to be, to roam around this planet, this beautiful Mother Earth that belongs to all of us is important. So getting back to the topic here, you know, weather is brutal. And heat is very precious. Humans do predictable things. They reduce draft, they reduce leakage, they create layers between inside and outside. They protect the body. And when the original design gives you giant glass wounds in the wall, you either keep bleeding heat or you switch the wound shut.
You don't stitch it shut with elegance if you're panicking. You stitch it shut with what you have. Bricks, mortar, boards, patchwork, whatever stops the cold from invading your bones. You know what it's like when it's cold.
Oh my goodness, when I first moved here to Silver City back in forever ago, and living in an RV doesn't have good insulation. And when it got cold, I got the first time ever in my adult life, or even any part of my life, that I experienced frostbite on my toes. And it was, yeah.
I remember moving into it, and it was a metal can.
Yeah.
When you didn't have the heater on.
Yeah.
You'd have to get up in the morning and immediately go and turn on the space heaters.
Yeah. So here's the investigative question. If these palaces were always intended to be heated by fireplaces, why do we see desperate behavior like breaking up huge lower openings? Wouldn't a fire design palace have already been optimized for winter? Wouldn't it have vestibules? Wouldn't it have smaller openings? Wouldn't it have a logic that says we can keep heat in? But instead, we see something that reads like, this building was never meant to fight winter this way.
And I'm going to pressure test you, Mark, because listeners will, and they'll say, maybe bricking windows was just structural. Maybe the glass was expensive, and, maybe it broke. Maybe they wanted to stop vandalism. That's all fair. So how do we keep this from becoming a vibe?
Well, we keep it from being a vibe by measuring intent, not with a tape measure, with pattern. If it's maintenance, you'd expect consistent methods, thoughtful restoration, matching materials, careful symmetry. But what's so unsettling about the bricking in this place is how often it violates the design language. It breaks the rhythm. It interrupts the balance. It looks like a scar, not a choice.
And scars have a psychology. A scar says, we didn't want this. A scar says, we did what we had to do. A scar says, something happened to force a decision.
Which brings us to our next radio drama. This is the moment the building loses its original face, the moment a palace designs to drink sunlight gets forced into a bunker posture. Not because somebody wanted a bunker, because somebody wanted to live.
So we have the sound of mortar mixing, boots on stone, wind howling outside. Radio drama number 3 is called Bricked Window. Close it or freeze.
A grand hall in winter, the kind of hall that was designed to glow. Tall windows, white arches, light that was meant to pour in like water. But now the hall is a cold cathedral, and the people inside aren't asking, how do we preserve beauty? No, they're asking, how do we survive until spring? Workers stack bricks at the base of the enormous opening. Each brick a small surrender.
The sound of brick setting thud, the trowels scraping.
It's like bricking up a sky. You ever seen an opening this big?
Not in anything built for people. This is wrong. The cold comes in like it owns the place.
Less talking, more laying. If that wind keeps blowing through, the whole staff will be sick by morning. Move. But look at the design. Those arches, they're meant to be seen. We're ruining it. We're saving it. You want to preserve paint, or you want your kids alive?
The wind gust slams against the glass and a whistle through crack.
A gust pushes through the opening like a living thing. Candles tremble. The hall seems to flinch. And the workers don't argue anymore. They lay bricks faster.
Whoever built this didn't fear winter, or didn't know it.
Or they had heat we don't have. Now set the next row.
That line, heat we don't have. That's the entire haunting vibe of those buildings. Not magic, loss, a downgrade. Like moving into a mansion after the power's been cut and you're trying to live by candlelight.
And now we do the test number 3. If bricking windows is a response, what does it imply? It implies winter is winning. It implies that building is bleeding heat so badly that the occupants have decided light is a luxury they can't afford. Which is insane if the palace was designed for winter people.
Because northern people, real northern people that do these designs, they design buildings like their life depends on it. Because it does. Vestibules, smaller openings, double layers, windbreaks, thick thresholds, a culture of keep the warmth inside.
And yet, In these inherited palaces, we see the opposite. We see architecture that acts like it expects the inside climate to be stable regardless of outside weather, like the walls themselves were part of the heating plan. Like openings didn't matter the way they matter in a fireplace world, because in a fireplace world, openings are lethal. In a radiant world, openings are less catastrophic.
And here's another pressure test. Skeptics say you're assuming the windows were always single pane. Well, true. Sometimes older windows get replaced. Sometimes glass quality changes over time. But the core issue remains. These are massive openings. Even if you upgrade the glass, massive openings like that, in brutal climates, they require a design language built around buffers. And we don't see buffers as the baseline. We see buffers as retrofits.
Which makes the bricking feel like the blunt instrument solution. Not we planned for this, more like we can't make this work the way it was intended, so we'll reduce the building's lungs.
And now we get to the human payoff. Because if you brick something up, these openings, and you hack in stoves, the building becomes a compromise. It becomes half palace, half survival shelter. And that compromise shows up in the most intimate evidence of all: how people dressed, how they gathered, how they ate, how they breathed.
Exactly, and that's why the next drama is where it is in the order. We go from construction desperation to a dinner table that looks like status, but feels like desperation too. Because it's one thing to brick up a window, it's another thing to sit in formal clothing in a room that still won't warm. That's when the story stops being architectural. It becomes bodily.
Because your body doesn't care about narratives. If it's cold, you shiver. If it's cold, your breath shows. If it's cold, you wrap yourself in anything you can find. And that reminds me of a time I was working outside of one of these old world structures in St. Paul, at the St. Paul Cathedral outside. And we had to wait outside for our producer to check the sound or something, or the positions of the cameras. So we were there in 8-degree weather, winds blowing, and I had like my jacket, but I was standing still. I was layered up, but still, it was so cold. And the only thing I had was a packing blanket that I was using for my equipment, and it was not warm enough. So I understand when it's cold that you wrap yourself up in anything you can find, because that's what happened to me. And even if it ruins the performance of luxury.
And this is where we introduce the court fashion, quote unquote, excuse and put it on trial. The official story often frames fur wearing indoors as a kind of elite style. But here's the question: is it style or is it adaptation? Because adaptation is exactly what we've been watching. Chimneys punch, windows bricked, and now humans layer like they're camping inside the empire's crown.
Okay, but let me challenge you again, because if we don't, listeners will. Even in modern times, rich people do weird fashion things. We've seen it. They wear uncomfortable shoes. They wear costumes. They perform status. So how do we stop ourselves from turning fur at dinner into proof?
We don't treat it as proof. We treat it as a corroboration. It's a supporting witness. When you see survival retrofits in the building and you see survival behavior in the people, the two tell the same story. Not certainty, but coherence. And coherence is what investigative storytelling lives on.
So here it is. Drama number 4, the dinner that's supposed to be elegance, but feels like a temporary camp inside a monumental shell. Silverware clinking, a low murmur of a large room, and wind far off. Radio drama number 4, fur bundled dinner, elegance with teeth chattering.
A grand dining hall, high ceilings, long tables, candles, crystal, the performance of civilization. But the air is cold enough to make it look like the room is smoking. Breath hangs in front of every face. A small stove glows in the corner, overwhelmed by the scale. Nobles sit dressed for a summer portrait, wrapped in heavy fur like travelers lost in a storm.
The soft stove crackles and the gentle china clinks.
Pass the roast if you can. I like to taste it before it turns to sculpture.
The windows are magnificent. So much light, even in winter.
Yes, and so much winter. Whoever designed this hall must have hated human skin.
Well, the servants say the walls used to be warm, not by fire, by something built into the place, a kind of invisible comfort.
Servant talk? Old myths. They see pattern in drafts.
Do you feel the draft? It comes in from everywhere, like the building is hollow.
We've added 3 stoves. We've hired men to punch chimneys. We've bricked the lower openings, and still the room bites. So tell me, Countess, how is this a palace? This is a monument pretending to be a home.
Maybe we're the ones pretending. Maybe we live in someone else's design, and we're forcing it to speak our language. A distant giant door creaks open. Wind pushes in.
A massive door shifts somewhere down the hall. Cold sweeps in like a tide. Candles tremble. People pause mid-bite. In a room built for gods, everyone goes still like prey. Close it! Close it before we all freeze in our seats!
Crazy stuff.
In the last moment, everyone pausing mid-bite matters because it's not fashion, it's fear. It's the body's reacting to cold as a threat.
And now we connect the 3 clues. Chimney punch, copper mesh, bricked window. Then the dinner. These aren't separate curiosities. They're an actual chain. And the chain is telling one story. The building's original operating logic did not match the occupants' tools.
Which brings us to the next escalation, because right now the skeptic can still argue, fine, it was cold, they made do, end of story. But we're not done, because if the building once had a different operating system, we should see a clue above the walls, on the roofline, on the spires, on the finials, on the parts that interface with the sky.
And I'm going to say a word that always makes people nervous. Antenna. Not aliens, not magic. Antenna as a concept. A structure designed to interact with the atmosphere, to collect, to discharge, to conduct, to participate in the electrical environment.
Because if you have a conductor network of the walls, it has to connect to something. It has to go somewhere. It has to terminate in a place that makes sense. And the rooftops of these buildings are full of metal crowns that don't behave like purely decorative flourishes. Spikes, finials, domes, rods, crest, a skyline of conductors.
Now, and this is important, we're not declaring what it is. We are saying it functions suspiciously well as a collector geometry. And collectors have a visual language. They reach up, they interface, they crown, they unify the building into a single participating object.
So segment 3 ends with a new question, stronger than the last. If the walls were meant to distribute something, and the openings were designed as if winter didn't matter, and the roofline is designed like it wants to touch the sky, then what kind of building are we really looking at? A palace or a machine disguised as beauty?
Segment 4 is where we tempt the listener with a flashback, not as fact, as hypothesis, as what if this once worked? And we deliver the next radio drama, the glowing spire, the calm pre-shift night, the moment the building looks like it's doing what it was made to do. Segment 4 is the roof line wants the sky.
All right, we've earned this next step. We've watched them punch chimneys through ceilings. We've watched them peel back walls and find copper mesh. We've watched them break the sky shut. We've watched the dinner table turn into a survival scene. Now we go upward because the building keeps pointing us upward, not with a speech, with its shape.
This is where the case file gets dangerous, but in a good way. Because the moment we start talking about domes and spires and finials, people think we're doing science fiction. So we're going to do this in the disciplined way. We're going to run a test, not what do we want it to be, but what else could it be?
Test 4. If copper mesh exists in the walls as a conductor network, it needs a reason. Circuits are useless if they don't connect to something. Distribution without source is decoration. So what would a source look like on a building? It would look like a collector. It would look like an interface. It would look like something reaching into the air.
And that's where the rooftops start acting weird, because the old world skyline is full of metal crowns, finials, orbs, spikes, rods, crests. We've seen them in pictures. And when you look at them, the question isn't, are they pretty? The question is, why do they look like the business end of a device?
Now, skeptic pressure test. Skeptic says, lightning rods, decoration, religious symbolism, status. And that's all fair. Lightning rods are real. Decorative metal work is real. Religious symbolism is real too. So how do we tell the difference? We don't declare it. We compare patterns.
Lightning rods, they have a certain logic. They're placed where strikes are likely. They're designed for discharge to the ground, to connect down. If that's all we're seeing, then that's fine. But what's unsettling here is how often the rooftops look like they were designed to do more than discharge. They actually look like collectors, like arrays, like repeated geometry. And when collectors repeat across many buildings, the question becomes, are we looking at individual protection or actually a network?
Because if it's a network, it ties back to our earlier clues. Copper in walls, distribution patterns, uniform warmth as a missing assumption, and suddenly the heating problem stops being a rich people were dumb problem. It becomes a system went offline problem.
And now this is important. When we say system, we're not claiming we can prove exactly how it worked. We're saying the building behaves like it once had an infrastructure layer that modern occupants in today's world don't and didn't control. Like moving into a house where the radiant floor system is dead and all you have is a space heater. You can survive, but the design will feel wrong. The design will make you feel small and crude inside something elegant.
And the rooftops are where the design feels most intentional because doors and windows can be dismissed as style, except for the giant doors. But a crown of metal reaching up from a dome, that's harder to dismiss as just fashion when it's everywhere. It looks like a handshake with the sky.
So here's what we do next. We don't say this is what happened. We offer a controlled thought experiment, a flashback, a what if. And we keep it clearly labeled as visualization because that is good storytelling and it's honest. Because the purpose of this moment is to make the listener feel the contrast, to feel what the building might have been before it became a freezer with emergency stovepipes.
And that brings us to radio drama number 5, The Glowing Spire, the night where the building looks alive.
Radio drama 5 is Glowing Spire Flashback. The building breathes.
A calm night, not a blizzard night, not a survival night, a quiet, cold, clear night where the sky feels deep. A palace stands under moonlight, too large, too precise, too confident. And at the top of the highest spire, a metal crown catches the air. A faint blue glow blooms around the finial. Not flame, not smoke, a calm electrical aura, like the building is drinking from the sky.
Wow, it's glowing. Is it burning?
It's not burning. It's alive.
Alive? Buildings aren't alive.
Not like animals, like instruments. They hold a field. They hold a tone. They take what the sky gives and makes it useful. Heat, light, comfort, quiet.
So the walls aren't just stone.
Stone is the body. Metal is the nerve. Geometry is the mind. And the sky is the river.
How long does it last?
As long as the sky stays honest, as long as the chart stays clean, as long as nobody breaks the song.
A faint, distant crackle, not threatening yet.
The spire glows softly. The palace windows reflect a gentle warmth. Not firelight, something steadier, something that doesn't flicker, something that doesn't leave soot. And in the courtyard below, no one carries wood. No one feeds a stove. The building does its own work.
Hum swells and a sharp electrical snap. What was that?
A warning. When the sky changes, everything changes.
Okay, let's tag that clearly. That was a visualization, a way to feel the contrast, but here's why it matters to the case file. It gives us a missing variable that solves multiple contradictions at once. Uniform warmth, no soot, no fuel caravans, no constant chimney dependence, a building that behaves like a system, not a shell.
And now we return to skeptic pressure. Skeptic says, that's poetic. That's not evidence. Correct. Poetry isn't evidence, but poetry can point at evidence. So here's the evidence question. If a building once interacted electrically with the environment, what would we expect to observe historically? We expect reports of spires glowing during charged weather. We'd expect St. Elmo's fire descriptions. We'd expect people noticing tingles, shocks, odd light effects. And yes, those reports exist in many places across history, not as free energy proof as ordinary observation of atmospheric electricity.
And we'd also expect something else. We'd expect a lot of later retrofits designed to control, ground, or replace those interactions. Grounding straps, new wiring, boilers, radiators, chimneys, anything that gives predictable heat under predictable ownership. Because if your building heat depends on the sky, then your comfort depends on something nobody can tax. And predictable power, well, loves a bill.
So here's the key shift in our case file. We go from did these buildings have a different system to why did the system get replaced? Sometimes replacement is just necessity. System fails, people adapt. But sometimes replacement is opportunity. System fails, someone offers a paid alternative. And that's where the retrofit era becomes the real story, not the original designers, the inheritors.
Which brings us to drama number 6, settler adaptation. This is the moment the skyline gets ugly, the moment the ornate roofline gets scarred by crude stacks and pipes, the moment survival wins over symmetry. Radio drama number 6, settler adaptation, patch the crown.
A palace roof in winter, snow biting sideways, men on ladders, hands raw, face wrapped. Below them, the building is still magnificent, but above them, the work is crude. A chimney stack is being bolted in where no chimney belonged. A stovepipe is being routed across ornaments like a scar across the skin.
A metal clang and a tool scrape. Hold it steady. If this shifts, we lose the whole run.
I don't care if it's ugly. Ugly is warm. Ugly keeps the staff alive. Bolt it.
Why do the roof spikes look like they're meant for something? Like they're supposed to catch the air?
Catch the air? We need to catch heat. Stop dreaming. The old way is dead. We burn fuel now. That's the modern way.
A pipe drops, clangs, and then it rolls.
A pipe rolls across ornate stone. It stops against a metal finion. For a moment, just a moment, there's a faint static snap, like the building still has a pulse. But nobody pauses. Nobody asks. They tighten bolts. They seal joints. They build a new system on top of the old one. And the palace becomes a hybrid, a machine in a coma, wearing a mask of smoke. That's the retrofit era in one scene. Not malicious villainy, not supernatural mystery, just human response. A system stops working or becomes unreliable, and humans replace it with something they can control, something they can own.
And now segment 4 ends, and we're going to do a song after this with our strongest hook yet, because we've moved from room level cues to rooftop level cues. And now we're ready to ask the next question. If this pattern repeats across whole cities, what would a post-system collapse city look like?
And so the next song is She Gently Weeps, and I wrote this back in 2009, I think it was. And little did I know how the state of the world is going to be now. It's almost like I was prophetically, talking about how Mother Earth actually weeps. So that's who she is, and she gently weeps.
Outside your window, what do you see? The children, they are starving, filled with disease. And you are safely sleeping, tucked in your bed, while the rest of the world is dying. You sleep instead. What's going on? What have we done? What's going on? Take now to turn this around, break down the ego, stop fighting now. Let us stop our fearless leader from destroying our world. No one will come to save us, we are on our own. What's going on? What have we done? What's going on? What have we done? Thank you for being you. You have ignored this, you know this is true. Get up from your ass, do something that lasts to make the change. Put your weapons down, stop running around. This is your world and she is slowly dying. She gently weak. The ground now, stop being a fool. The media's been lying, religion has too. The one man who really cared, whose message was true and fair, we killed and destroyed and made into a religion, a dogmatic belief. He came to show us, change us and free us. Instead we destroyed his teachings. We made a mess of things. What's going on? What have we done? What's going on? What have we done?
Yep. What's going on? What have we done? That's, I tell you.
You've done a lot.
We've done a lot. It's,
Not good.
Not good stuff. But so, in getting back, what would a post-system collapse city look like? It would look quiet, too quiet. It would look empty in a way that doesn't match the grandeur. It would look like a world waiting for occupants, a world inherited, not built, which brings us to the next drama, the empty avenue, the eerie inheritance. The moment you realize the buildings are just too big, they're too unclaimed.
And once you feel that emptiness, you're ready for the ending sequence. The split between before and after, the symbolic wound, and the staff corridor, the human scale suffering inside impossible scale. So we have segment 5, the inheritance.
Segment 5 is where we close the case file for tonight, not with certainty, with a verdict structure. What explanation survived the evidence? What explanation collapsed under it? And why the building themselves keep whispering the same thing? Someone built for comfort, someone else learned to endure.
And we're going to do this clean. We're going to let each scene hit, and then we're going to stop and interrogate what it means. Because the listener, you guys deserve the same thing we demanded from the official story. A structure that holds up.
First, we widen the lens up to the scale where a single brick window isn't just a renovation choice, it's a repeating pattern, a whole city mood. Because when a system collapses, the evidence isn't only inside one palace, it echoes outward into boulevards, into public squares, into places that look built for crowds, but feel like they're waiting for them.
This is where the case stops feeling like architecture and starts feeling like inheritance, like living in a house with rooms you never use because you can't afford to heat them. The structure remains, the living has changed.
So here's the scene. Listen to the atmosphere.
Wind through a wind-filled, wide, empty street. A distant flag, rope tapping a pole. And this is radio drama number 8. Empty Avenue Inheritance.
7.
Oh, number 7.
Yeah.
Where is everyone?
Imagine a grand boulevard, wide enough for parades, lined with monumental buildings, columns, arches, stonework, so precise it almost looks manufactured. But there are no crowds, no market noise, no everyday life, just emptiness, so complete it feels staged. Snow dust drifts across the street like a slow curtain. A distant door swings slightly in the wind. The sound echoes too long.
This can't be right. A street like this is a promise. Where are the people?
Gone, or moved, or buried. Pick your word. The building stayed, the story didn't.
It feels like we're trespassing, like we walked into a city that's asleep.
Not asleep, abandoned. And abandonment doesn't need permission. It invites scavengers. That word, scavengers, lands hard because it's not a moral insult. It's a human pattern. Humans move into what's left. Humans rename it. Humans normalize it. And then, 2 generations later, the normalization becomes a history lesson.
Now we move to the emotional x-ray, the before and after feeling inside the same room, and we're labeling this for what it is, not proof, a way to feel what the evidence has been implying. The same architecture behaves differently depending on whether the original comfort layer is alive or dead. So we're going to do drama number 8,
Okay.
The same hall, 2 ages.
The same hall, the same ceiling, the same windows, the same scale that makes people feel small. But 2 versions of reality share the space. On one side, warmth without flame, light without soot, a steady hum under the silence, like the building is holding the air gently in its hands. No frantic stoves, no chopped openings, no patched scars. The room feels designed to be lived in. On the other side, cold stone, bricked openings, a small stove coughing heat into a volume it cannot control, a hacked pipe staining ornament, the same architecture, but a different relationship to comfort. Someone built for comfort, someone else learned to endure. That's the core of our verdict structure. Not who did it, not what secret society, just this. We keep seeing signs of a downgrade.
Now we give the skeptic their strongest seat at the table, and here it is. These are old buildings. They were inefficient. People suffered. History's hard. There's nothing more to it.
And here's why that explanation struggles with the pattern we laid out. It doesn't explain why fire infrastructures often appear as an afterthought. Definitely doesn't explain why you build giant openings in climates where openings are deadly, unless some other heating assumption existed. It doesn't explain why conductors like patterns show up behind walls in multiple cases. It explains discomfort. It doesn't explain improvisation in buildings that were supposedly designed for the climate they sit in.
And now we end at human scale, not rooftops, not theories, a corridor. A stove that barely holds off the cold. The people who don't get to call it fashion. So radio drama number 9.
Number 9.
The first winter, the staff corridor.
A service corridor, narrower than the grand halls, but still too long, too tall, too echoing. A small cast iron stove glows weakly in the corner. It isn't heating the corridor, it's just offering hope. A maid wraps her arms around herself. A steward holds his hand over the stove like he's praying. Their breath hangs in the air.
They call it a palace, but it feels like a cave made of glass.
It was never meant to be this way.
Sometimes I lean against the wall and it's almost warm. Then it's gone.
Old nerves, cut, buried. They tell us to burn more fuel. They tell us it's progress. But all I know is every winter we'll fight the building. And every winter the building wins a little.
Did you ever feel like we live in the basement of someone else's world?
We do. And if you say that out loud, they call you ungrateful. So we whisper it to the stove and hope the stove doesn't go out. So here's the verdict ladder. Clean and honest. Three explanations we tested tonight. One, style and status. It explains the grandeur. It struggles with the survival scars. Two, conditions changed. It explains mismatch. It struggles with the conductor like wall patterns and the fire as retrofit vibe. Three, a system went offline. A missing comfort layer that fits the most clues with the fewest leaps. Oversized openings, retrofits, scars, soot, contradictions, and the repeated sense of downgrade.
And here's the last question we leave you with. Next time you pass an old grand building, don't look at the plaque. Look at the scars. Then ask the simplest question that started this whole episode. If fireplaces were the plan, why did the chimneys have to be punched through angels?
And if your first reaction is, that's dramatic, well, good. Because winter is dramatic. And these buildings don't read like they were designed to negotiate with winter. They read like they were designed to ignore it.
Which means the real question isn't, can we prove every detail tonight? The real question is, what story requires the fewest excuses? What story makes the scars make sense without twisting ourselves into knots?
And here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to tell you to believe. We're going to tell you to look the way investigators look. Not for vibes, not for legends, but for patterns.
Patterns like giant doors that open straight to the street in brutal climates, massive windows that bleed heat like open wounds, fire solutions that feel like afterthoughts, punched in, bolted on, routed through places nobody would route them, even if they planned it. Walls that sometimes reveal metal where decoration, quote unquote, doesn't fully explain the layout, and symmetry broken by survival.
Because symmetry is a signature of intent. When you see symmetry violated, it's like hearing a wrong note in a familiar song. It tells you something happened. Something forced a compromise.
You can play that video if you want to.
Okay.
And compromises are where truth hides, not in the perfect brochure version of a building. In the patched version, the version that had to keep bodies alive.
So we close the case file with one final instruction. Simple, practical, and kind of unsettling. Next time you're in a historic district, don't let the plaques do your thinking for you. Stand at street level and do one thing. Find where the building thinks the ground used to be.
Look for the half windows, the bricked arches, the doors that simply don't make sense, the vents that look like emergency surgery, the places where beauty got sacrificed to function.
Because a building will tell you the same thing it told us tonight. Someone built for comfort. Someone else learned to endure.
And if that's true, even a little, then we're not just looking at old architecture. We're looking at a story of inheritance, a world that kept the shell and lost the operating system.
So, before we end tonight, we need one more segment. Because if we stop at wasn't that weird, we've missed the point. The point is not architectural trivia. The point is power then. And now?
And I hear the listener already. Why do we need to know any of this? Why can't we just leave sleeping giants lie where they are? Because sleeping giants don't stay asleep when the conditions are right. And because the people who benefit from resets, whether they cause them or simply capitalize on them, have always loved one thing: a confused public. A public that thinks history is over. A public that thinks patterns are simply coincidence.
Let's say it plainly. Even if you think our entire investigation tonight is just a story about inefficient old buildings, the pattern still matters. Because what we actually mapped is a familiar cycle, a world that looks stable, a disruption, a scramble, an improvisation phase, then a consolidation phase where new winners step in and say, don't worry, will organize the chaos. And once they organized it, they owned it.
And that's the part people miss. A reset isn't just a catastrophe. When somebody shows up with paperwork, rules, and a brand new narrative, when the world is shaken enough that people will accept almost anything, as long as it feels like order.
So when you ask, why can't we let sleeping giants lie? Because a giant, quote unquote, isn't only the building. The giant is the mechanism. The mechanism that turns crisis into control, turns confusion into compliance, turns inheritance into ownership.
And you don't have to believe in a hidden energy system to see that mechanism. You can watch it in modern language. Public-private partnerships, emergency powers, stabilization, bailouts, temporary measures, national security. Words that sound like medicine, all under quotes, but medicine can also be a leash.
Here's the modern translation of what we've been circling all night. If the old world had systems, whatever they were, that produced comfort cheaply, quietly, widely, then the most valuable move you could make after a collapse is to replace abundance with scarcity. Because scarcity makes people easier to manage. Scarcity makes people compete with each other instead of looking up. Scarcity makes people accept the gatekeeper.
And what does the gatekeeper look like today? Not a king in a crown, a corporatocracy, a braided structure where government and corporate power stop being separate and start being one ecosystem, where policy becomes a product, where regulation becomes a negotiation, where access becomes the real currency.
And that's why this episode can't end in the 1800s. Because the same pattern is visible right now. A super wealthy class, consolidation influence. A political class dependent on donors, networks, and friends of the court, quote unquote. A public toll to pick sides, while the rules of the games are rewritten above their heads.
And now we're going to bring it all into focus with something you mentioned, something listeners already know on a gut level. Mar-a-Lago, not as a random name, as a symbol, a modern court wrapped in old world aesthetics.
Here's what's important about that symbol. Mar-a-Lago isn't a government building. It's not the Capitol. It's not the White House. It's a private estate built to look like the legacy, permanence, dynasty, a place designed to feel like this is where decisions get made, even if the public isn't in the room.
And that's where the hair on your arms should lift. Because when private property becomes a public court, when leaders and billionaires orbit the same chandelier, the line between public interest and private interest, it gets thin, then invisible, then laughed at.
And we've seen this movie before. In every era, the elites who thrive after resets don't just grab resources, they grab legitimacy. They wrap themselves in architecture, symbolism, and spectacle. They hold gatherings that make the world feel like it has a center, and that center is them.
That's why old world style matters, because style isn't just pretty. Style is messaging. Columns, arches, domes, gold, scale, they whisper the same phrase across the centuries. We are continuity. We are the rightful inheritors. We are the stewards, even when they're just the best positioned opportunists after a disruption.
So let's answer the listener's real question. What does this mean to me? It means this. If you understand the reset pattern, you stop being hypnotized by the shock. You start watching the follow-up. You start watching who writes the new rules. Who gets bailed out? Who gets to buy the wreckage at a discount? Who gets to own the new narrative?
And you start noticing the modern echoes of robber baron behavior. Not because history is repeating perfectly, but because incentives repeat. When there's upheaval, some people see tragedy. Other people see a buying opportunity, a restructuring opportunity, a chance to turn the public's loss into private gain.
And that's why we can't just say that was then, because then becomes now. When the public gets tired, distracted, and disoriented, when people start saying, I don't care anymore, just make it stop, that's when resets become easier. Not because someone presses a button, because a population hands over permission.
So if you're listening tonight and you feel that creeping dread, good. Not because we want fear, because we want clarity. Fear without clarity becomes panic, but clarity turns fear into discernment.
And discernment is what breaks the cycle, because the reset pattern depends on one thing more than any other: amnesia. People forgetting what happened last time. People forgetting that every temporary emergency measure has a way of becoming permanent, like back in 2020. People forgetting that the people who save the system are often the ones who profit from the system being fragile in the first place, or 9/11. Nothing ever went back the same after that.
Never did. So the question isn't, is a global reset coming? The question is, what would it look like if it actually did? And the answer is not a fireworks in the sky. It's paperwork on the ground. It's rule changes. It's ownership transfers. It's narrative updates. It's new normals. It's private meetings that decide public futures.
And that brings us back to the haunting phrase we've used all night. Someone built for comfort, someone else learned to endure. Here's a modern warning inside that line. If the public learns to endure everything, if endurance becomes our only virtue, then comfort becomes a privilege rented back to us by whoever owns the system.
So what do? We do not do hopelessness. Hopelessness is a sedative. We do attention. We do pattern recognition. We do refusing to be rushed into consent. We do asking the question that breaks the spell. Who benefits from my confusion?
And before we go on, but Lid 45 had a comment. Radium used to be used in stoves long ago, not coal or wood. Maybe those old world buildings used radium or mercury, the two elements we are told are deadly. And we were talking about even lead.
Yeah.
That they started saying lead poisoning and all this stuff. And it's like, there's definitely a wool being pulled over our eyes.
Oh, yeah, for
definitely.
sure.
So because the real sleeping giant isn't a palace, it's your ability to connect dots across time. And if you keep that giant awake, then resets become harder. Not impossible, but harder. Because power loves darkness, but it hates an audience.
So when you see modern elites emulating legacy aesthetics, when you see them building private courts or grand ballrooms, when you see them hosting the world under chandeliers like they did last night at Mar-a-Lago, don't just argue about personalities. Ask what the stage is doing. Ask what the symbolism is buying. Ask what kind of future is being normalized in that room.
And what was it that Trump said? Oh, $2 billion is nothing, or $2 million is nothing. It's
like painting.
For a painting. And I'm thinking, do you realize how many hungry people there are in the world today for you to be throwing that in people's faces?
I know.
That's crazy. So this isn't just history. It's a lens. And the lens helps you see what matters most. Not the spectacle, the transfer. We've peeled back the layers on these impossible palaces, doors to the sky and lands of ice, buildings that laugh at winter. But if fireplaces couldn't heat them, then what did?
Next Tuesday, episode 3 of our 8-part series, The Buried Empire, The Global Reset, Free Energy Exposed, the lost power system of the old world. Cathedrals, not as churches or places of worship, but as power stations, red bricks as capacitors, star forts as energy nodes, a global grid that glowed silently until it was deliberately shut down.
The truth is about to light up Tuesday night. Don't miss it. You guys really want to mark your calendars. I hope you guys are enjoying the series so far. It really answers a lot of the questions. Everything is not as we've been told.
There's a lot of interest about this topic, and more and more channels that we see coming online, sharing AI generated content that brings, this to the forefront. People are becoming more and more aware that the world that they live in is not the world that actually exists. It's a world that's been fabricated, a world that's been constructed. We just found out about New Year's Day and the celebration of New Year's, and how Times Square was basically a propaganda thing that New York Times bought the square and decided to have a
celebration so that they could sell more products. I mean, we're basically made to be consumers, slaves and consumers.
And that's what capitalism is based on. It's
totally
based on always becoming better, grabbing more, getting to the top, knocking people down. It's never about equity and kindness and awareness of others' needs around you. It's never been about, helping your fellow man.
And for those that say, well, then, why don't you go to a socialist country or a communist country? Realize that they own all the systems. They have a handle on everything, and they create the whole orchestration to point at you. Look at how they live in communism. They don't have anything there. Look how grateful you should be for everything you have. It's a big stage. This whole world is conducted and controlled by an elitist bloodline that are not even human, in my opinion.
People don't even understand. Like, they look at the whole issue with the war in Iraq and the invasion of Afghanistan. They look at, the reasons that the United States government said that they were going there, and has nothing to do with the fact that, the real truth is that Saddam Hussein was becoming, self-supporting of his own country, that they were able to get off the gold standard of the dollar, and the petrodollar, and they had their own means of financial support, and they didn't want to play with the world banking system.
But that's what they've done throughout all the leaders in the world. First, they try to bribe them, and if the bribing doesn't work, then they do something to either take them out or destroy them. Look at what's happening in Venezuela right now. Yeah. What is it that they want? They want the oils.
Yeah.
It's like, people need to open their eyes and stop the stupidity of thinking, I'm patriotic, I love America. America is not even a country, it's a corporation. It's
as you can see, Elon Musk basically took over the federal government when he went in there and took all of our information, and God knows what he did with it, and put it into some AI system for future control of all of us, through, diabolical and very nefarious means. And we still look at it and we go, what did Elon Musk have to do with, Doge and all that whole thing?
It's just, people are so blinded and unaware, because they're using your hatred of others, of immigrants, of those of us in the LGBT, they put that in center stage, and they have you, they capture you, and whatever they do, you're okay with, but you're not seeing exactly what's behind the curtain.
And you see that there's been all this talk about immigration and reform and getting people out of the country and all this. But what it is actually a cover for what they actually want to do. And that is to take away the rights of every American citizen and to live under some corporate monstrosity that basically does not obey any constitution, does not really believe in any kind of republic form of government, no democratic system whatsoever, no social needs met, no infrastructure, just the rich getting richer.
Yeah, that's it. So Valid 45 says, can't wait for Tuesday. This is also eye-opening. April 1st was a new year, but then created April Fool's Day to ridicule those that refuse to accept January. Janus 1st is the day instead. Yep.
And Janus is a fire god of some sort.
Yeah, we learned
it's like
the other day.
Who knew?
I mean, it's like we're waking up very rapidly. There's a quickening happening, and they know what's going to take place. So they're getting ready to do another reset, to do something nefarious. It's Pretty sad.
And we talked about it, what they are planning to do. And it has to do with AI, and it has to do with, sticking us into a situation where we become one with the technology, and they implant something into our brain, which actually keeps us from being able to be human anymore.
Yeah. And also, we're in a sense ready to ascend as Homo luminous, and they want to stop that, because once that happens, when we ascend with the planet, then they lose, the power that they have over us.
What we said in episodes in the past is not fighting the system; it's actually superseding the system and becoming irrelevant to the system, and the system actually becomes irrelevant at all. It loses its meaning. It
falls apart.
It cannot exist in the environment of the new frequency.
A higher vibration. And that's what we need to do. And it's hard. I know that's why they keep us fighting one another. That's why they keep all the bad news and all these things, because they want that lower vibration. But we need to bring our vibration up. And I know it sounds woo-woo, but what more woo-woo than what they've taught you to believe in? That whole biblical concept, that all laws and hell and brimstone. I mean, what more woo-woo than that? But empowerment of who you are it's something that they don't want. So they, like Valid 45 was saying that, they made April 1st is actually the new year, but they made a muck out of it and made it April Fool's Day. Yeah. So they try to make fools out of those that bring the truth, those that try to awaken, like they bring down the Gnostics and anything that is not what they want you to believe. And it's time for people to really open up their eyes, and question everything. You have to. I mean, it's just the way it is. So, guys, remember to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that notification button. If there's any way you could support the show, the links are down below. You could either donate via PayPal, or you could become a Patreon and get exclusive material there in Patreon, and as well as helping us do all the creative work that we try to do to awaken humanity, because it's very important. We're at a crossroads right now that is critical.
We are. And one of the things that we had alluded to in the prior episode was talking about these buildings and how they weren't built for regular humans. And we didn't even tackle the whole giant, debate, or the lack of restrooms in these buildings. I mean, they literally had no working restrooms. So that tells you something, that, the civilization that existed before existed in a manner that was different from ours, that they didn't need places to dump.
Well, I don't think they probably even had to have a number one or a number two like we do. I think they were a very different species. I mean, there's something so shockingly, I can't even find the word, that we will find out in our lifetime.
If you think about it, the denigration of having to literally, every time you drink, every time you eat, having to go find a place. And this is something that we experienced when we were on the road living, is the need of a toilet and a place to safely dispose of your excrement. Yeah. So,
what kind of loving God creates a being that has to do that?
And then the concept of toilet paper and how you literally just smear things, and it doesn't really clean anything unless you were to use a gob of it.
That's why you need wipes or a bidet, which is what we own, a bidet. But, when you really start to think and really remove the veil, nothing of this world makes sense. Not the God figure, the creation storyline, nothing makes sense.
Not the systems of this world, not its financial markets, not its symbols of excellence, its prestige, its statues, its, none of it.
It's all meant to profit the corporation and the elites, and we are just the slaves.
And imagine that there was a world at one time where humanity worked in unity, where civilizations weren't fighting each other. They were a part of a common brotherhood, sisterhood of mankind that actually worked with the elements of the earth to produce the ability to live in peace, to live in a world, like John Lennon talks about, where there is no God and there is no systems of religious control and systems of governing controlling us, but that we lived in a state of peace and tranquility, that we could spend time building beautiful things and adding detail and creating art and making music. I mean, it was a different world, and we are scavengers of this inherited world that we do not even know.
No, and they've changed the history. They've lied to us about the timeline. They've lied completely. And those that are in power have either time traveled, they know how everything works. That's why they are in power and they have the money that they do, and they manipulate the system.
Absolutely. I mean, how else would a person like an Elon Musk or a Donald Trump be able to amass such a fortune, unless they had access to abilities that we regular folk don't have. We don't have access to that knowledge of the Illuminati or whatever cultural euphemism that's being used to explain the elite system that governs this world and the powers that are over them, who rule in dimensions of existence that you would be blown away. I remember Donald Trump talking about aliens or something, and he was talking about when they first got Space Force going or something. He's like, there's things that I can't tell you about because
the rabbit hole goes so
just
deep.
Too much information.
Deep. What's underneath our feet, because it's not just all about in the sky. It's what underneath our feet. Those people that created the system, they still live in the center of the earth. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but it's not.
Or the dimensions.
And the dimensions,
that exist, that coexist within our planet, that actually, we're just in a different, lower frequency from that dimension.
Right. So, but it says we were once the EGGs. Maybe they built the old world. Yeah, something, either those mythological gods lived during that time, and it was like a millennium type of thing where they had everything they needed and wanted, and there was no such things as wars and famine, and we lived in a world and cohabitated with the earth in peace and love and harmony.
They talked about old world governance and how it looked, and it was ruled by the noble, ruled by the honest, ruled by the good, not ruled by the corrupt, by the liars, by the manipulators. It wasn't ruled by the conquerors. It was ruled by the governed people were happy to be living in unity, and
very different time. And, I think that whatever came to this planet and took it over, it's kind of like looking at Star Wars. And I know, again, it sounds crazy, but, fiction is not actually fiction. What's the reality is stronger than what's that old saying?
Yeah.
But, it's all going to be revealed. It's all just, it's just Pandora's box has been opened, and buckle up. That's all I have to say. So I think we've kind of rambled long enough. Want to take this time to thank all of you and wish you a great, wonderful New Year's. Hopefully,
New Year.
New Year. Hopefully things, I don't know. I think things have to happen. The bad has to happen in order for the good to finally come through. Because I know there's going to be a lot of changes, but it's going to get bumpy before it gets better. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you next Tuesday. Have a great weekend and stay safe, stay warm. I know that winter is upon us. It's starting to get a little colder here.
Yeah, you feel that frost coming.
Yeah. It does look like a real window back there,
It
doesn't
does.
it? And we get some really cool backdrops. But we thank you for tuning in, for subscribing and sharing, and for being part of the solution, because that's what we all need to be, part of the solution. Need to stop focusing so much on the problems, but start focusing on the solution.
That's
and
right.
Loving one another as we should. So we love you guys, and we're going to end the show with a song called "You Are the Light." And you are the light. Let me take this out of here, or else it'll. Oh, okay. I thought I saw something there. You are the light, and you are perfect in every way. So don't let anyone tell you otherwise. We love you guys, but remember to always love yourselves too. Have a wonderful night, and be well.
Please help me understand the man. Oh, this world we live in, yeah, this unforeseen land.
Are you awake? Are you asleep? Or did you have too much to drink? We don't connect, we don't respect. Is it time to give up yet? It's all about control and domination. The prophets of this world and their damnation.
Your eyes are hazy, yeah. You might as well be dead. And you have been programmed to live your life with regrets.
Are you awake? Are you asleep? Or did you have too much to
You drank so much to drink.
We don't respect. Is it time to give up yet?
Yeah, you
It's all about control and domination. The prophets of this world and their damnation.
Hey there, friend. Look inside your heart. Have you forgotten that we need love to evolve? Oh,
Are you awake? Are you asleep? Or did you have too much to
drank too much today.
We don't respect. Is it time to give up? It's all about control and domination. The prophets of this world and their damnation.
Look at me. I come from far, far away. A place in heaven. They didn't turn me away. Yeah.
Awake? Are you asleep? Or did you have too much to drink? We don't connect, we don't respect. Is it time to give up yet? It's all about control and domination. The prophets of this world and their damnation.
You are love, yeah, and perfect in every way. Don't let them fool you. Oh, yeah. They won't turn you away.
Awake? Are you asleep? Or did you have too much to drink?
Have too much to drink.
We don't respect. Is it time to give up?
I bet
It's
my
all about
dad.
control and domination.
Oh,
The prophets of this world and their damnation.
you are the world, you are the light. Just go on, friend, and shine really bright. It's up to you to make amends and learn to love yourself.